What's up and welcome to 17 None. Today we're going to be making Shoyu Ramen. We're making Shoyu Ramen, we want to focus on 5 key elements. This will be the noodles, the toppings, the aroma oil, the broth and the tare. And what makes a good bowl of ramen is when all these elements work together in harmony. Making ramen takes a heck of a long time, but it's the time and the attention to detail which will make a really good bowl of ramen. Just before we begin, you can help support the channel by clicking on the subscribe button, and let's get straight into making some ramen. Let's begin by making the tare for this ramen. This first step is best done the night before making tare. In a small saucepan, add 3 dried shiitakes, 10 grams of kombu and 250 ml of water. Cover with a lid and leave to infuse overnight. The following day we're now ready to make tare. To the dashi we now want to add 7 grams of sea salt, 10 ml of mirin and 250 ml of light shoyu. Now to cook. Place the tare onto a medium to high heat. Then we're going to want to bring the temperature up to around 80 degrees centigrade. When at temperature, turn off the heat. Then we want to add 7 grams of katsuobushi. Place the tare to one side and we're going to want to allow this to steep for around 15 minutes. At this point the tare should be pretty salty but still taste delicious. Finally, pass through a fine sieve and we now have tare. The cool thing about tare is that the longer it's stored the better it gets. Place to one side for now and we'll come back to this later. Now let's make some char siu. In a saucepan, add a 500 gram slab of pork belly. To the pork we're now going to want to add 2 garlic cloves, 10 grams of ginger, 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar, 200 ml of light shoyu, 100 ml of mirin, and finally cover with around 500 ml of water. Place a saucepan onto a high heat and bring the liquid up to a boil. As soon as the liquid starts to boil, place a lid over the top and simmer for around 90 minutes. After 90 minutes, the pork should now be ready. When you take out the pork, it should have a slight jiggle to it. Place the pork belly onto a baking tray and allow to cool. When cool and dry, place into a hot oven set at 180 degrees centigrade. Then roast the char siu for around 20 minutes or until nice and caramelized. When ready, remove from the oven and we'll come to slice this up later. This is a pretty simple but effective char siu. Now to make a dashi which we will use to blend with the soup. In a small saucepan, add 15 grams of kombu, 10 dried shiitake mushrooms and 750 ml of cold water. Place onto a medium to high heat and bring the temperature of the dashi up to around 80 degrees centigrade. Try not to go over this as this can make the kombu become bitter. Next, remove the kombu and dried shiitake mushrooms and bring the temperature up to 90 degrees centigrade. To finish the dashi, kill the heat, then add 10 grams of katsuobushi. Place the dashi to one side and allow to steep for around 30 minutes. When steeped, pass through a fine sieve and the dashi is pretty much ready. Store the dashi overnight in the fridge along with the tare and the char siu. The next day we can now move on to making the chicken soup. Start by removing the toenails of around 500 grams of chicken feet. The reason for doing this is so that they don't end up in the final soup. Then when trimmed, make a small incision on the base of the feet. When prepared, place the chicken feet to one side for now. Now let's move on to the chicken. Start by removing the 2 breasts first. We don't need these for this recipe, but we do need the skin. Remove the skin, then place the breast to one side. For the rest of the chicken, make long incisions all over. This is going to help extract as much flavour as possible into the soup. Now time to cook. For the soup you want to use the biggest pot you can get a hold of. Just for reference, the pot I'm using holds around 7 litres. To the pot add the chicken breast skin, the chicken feet and the chicken carcass. Next, submerge the chicken with around 4 to 5 litres of cold water. Transfer the pot onto a high heat and we're going to want to bring the liquid up to a boil. And what we want to do from here is to allow all the impurities to rise to the top of the water. Try to remove as much as possible and this will allow us to have a nice clear broth. When clear, turn the heat down slightly to a rolling boil. Place a lid over the top and cook the soup for around 5 hours. Whilst we wait on the soup to cook, we can move on to making an aroma oil. For the aroma oil, we want to finely mince 3 shallots, 3 garlic cloves, 5 grams of ginger and 4 spring onions. We will use these to infuse the oil and also to create a topping. To make up the oil, add 150 ml of cooking oil to a small saucepan. Next, add all of the minced vegetables and fry on a high heat. At this point, we want to fry the vegetables as far as possible without burning them. When it gets to this stage, you want to keep a close eye on the vegetables. Keep stirring, and when it gets to this stage, you want to pull from the heat. Pass the oil through a fine sieve and we now have our aroma oil. And this aroma oil will be used to add fragrance to the broth. As for the vegetables, strain these onto kitchen paper and we'll use these as a topping. Now let's go back to the soup. After 5 hours of cooking, it's time to incorporate some aromatics. Finely slice 20 grams of ginger, slice 1 garlic bulb in half, and finely slice 1 leek. When prepared, we can incorporate the aromatics into the soup. After 5 hours of cooking, the soup should be nice and intensified. The soup should have an intense chicken flavour, and it's at this point we want to add the aromatics. Add the sliced garlic, ginger and leek. Then we're going to want to cook the soup for a further 60 minutes. I usually add the aromatics at this stage of the cooking process, as I find this maximises the freshness of the soup. After 1 hour of cooking and a total of 6 hours of total cooking time, the soup is now ready. Remove from the heat, then begin to pass the soup through a fine sieve. This step is slightly long, but we want to get as much soup from the aromatics and chicken as possible. When passed, we should end up with an intense aromatic chickeny soup. And it's at this point where we can add the dashi stock we made earlier to the soup. Add the dashi stock and the soup to a large pot. And now we have our double soup for Shoyu Ramen. This soup can be stored or placed onto the heat until ready to be served. All that's left to do now is to prepare a few toppings. For toppings, I went with finely slicing some Naruto maki. Then I blanched and gathered some pak choy. You can use spinach also, but I could only get pak choy this time. Then lastly, finely slice some green onions. Place these toppings to one side and also gather the fried aromatics from the aroma oil. Now onto the char siu. Slice the char siu into 1 cm thick slices. When sliced, I like to reheat and char this up by using a blowtorch. Finally, let's talk noodles. I always use homemade noodles for ramen, and I'll leave a link on the recipe on how to make those down below. Fresh noodles don't take long to cook at all. Add to a pan of boiling water and cook for around 45 to 50 seconds. Then when cooked, drain really well and then we're ready to serve. Time to build this bowl of ramen. Add 30 ml of the tare first, then add around 2 teaspoons of the aroma oil. Next, I like to add a small zesting of some fresh lemon. This is optional, but I find it helps lift the soup. Next, we want to add around 300 ml of our double soup made earlier. Now we want to add the cooked ramen noodles. Then fold them over to create a platform for the toppings. I'm not sure why, but I always love this part when building ramen. Finally, to add the toppings. Let's start with the char siu first, some leafy greens, a good handful of sliced spring onions, a slice of Naruto maki, and 1 last drizzle of the aroma oil. Finish with a few nori sheets and this ramen is now ready. This bowl is my current Shoyu Ramen go-to method. And what I love about making ramen is that you can never stop learning. I look forward to see how my ramen skills improve in 10 years time. But regardless, this bowl still tasted pretty damn good. And I hope you get to try out the recipe. Thanks for watching and I hope you guys enjoyed this ramen recipe. If you want to see more content like this in the future, then click on the like, subscribe, share button, all that other good stuff. It really helps support the channel. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and as always, peace.